it's a couple different things. One, it's hanging out with the right groups of people.
Mm-hmm.
Two, it's telling people what you're doing. If you're not promoting you, you're not promoting your business, you're not promoting what you're doing, telling people what you're doing. Social media is very easy to do that.
All right, everybody, welcome to the show. This week we have a bonus interview. We have a guest here with us. I'm going to call you the $100 million man. This is Tim Bratz. He's a commercial real estate investor, and I know a lot of our audience has been in this residential investor like ourselves, but I've always been a student on the sidelines, listening, paying attention to a lot of the conversations around commercial. I have been obviously very interested in the idea of putting a lot of houses in one box instead of having a bunch of houses spread all over the city. So I'm very excited to have Mr. Tim Bratz here with us. What's interesting about Tim is a lot of commercial guys I've known have been in the business for decades. And Tim has been able to create a huge portfolio in only the last 5 years. He also comes from a residential background. So any of you guys out there that are like, oh, look, I have to get to a certain level in residential before I'm able to do commercial. You know, it's too big. You have to be too seasoned. I think Tim's going to squash that mentality and that mindset here in this show. So very excited to have this guest with us. Tim is also a family man. How old is you have a son? Is that right?
I have a daughter that's 3 and a son that'll be 1 this month.
Oh, wow. Yeah. So 2 young ones like me as well. Family man, which is really why we do this real estate thing in the first place, right?
100%.
It's just a vehicle, but I love interviewing other family men as well, who are in business and just using this to create massive leverage. So is there anything else that I left out, Tim, about your background, or can you just?
I'm sure we'll go over all of it.
All right, cool. So I like to start by just, like I said, let's talk about the lifestyle piece. Why commercial real estate, and why did you pick this as opposed to any other business that you could jump into?
Yeah, so I first of all, thanks for having me, Brandon. This is awesome to be here, and I really appreciate the invite. So, I got involved in real estate, or started paying attention to real estate when I was going through college, which was 03 to 07, and that's when the boom was happening. You know, I'm 32 years old now, and when I was watching that, people were like, "Listen, if you want to make money and have some lifestyle, you need to get involved in real estate." So that's what motivated me back then, and got involved in real estate after college, and I've actually moved out to New York City. My brother's a federal agent. I lived out there. He was out there, and shacked up with him, and got a job brokering commercial real estate. And I remember as like a retail leasing agent, so I would help businesses either find a second location or help a landlord market their retail or office space. And I remember brokering. First of all, let me backtrack. While I had that job, I remember just walking around the city and walking through one of the parks. I think it was like Madison Square Park in New York, and like seeing all these people on like a Tuesday morning, just sitting in the park, reading a book, just hanging out, throwing a frisbee, playing with their kids, playing with their dog. I'm like, this is like a Tuesday morning. There must be something more to life than trading time for a 9-to-5 job, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like that was already spinning in my head. I'm trying to find books on, creating automatic and residual income and that kind of stuff. Like I heard this fairy tale that something like that existed, where you could do something once and get paid on it over and over again. And then I brokered my first commercial lease, and it was a 400 square foot space in Greenwich Village, and the rent was $10,000 a month with 4% annual escalations every year, and it was a 12-month lease. And so I multiplied out what this landlord was going to make from this one small retail space in their building over the course of 12 years. And for doing something one time, they were going to make $2 million on it over the course of 12 years.
Wow.
Residual income. And that didn't include the other 7, retail spaces that they had on the ground floor, and 15 stories of apartments above it. And I'm thinking, dude, I'm on the wrong side of the coin. I'm doing transactional brokering of real estate. I need to be owning real estate and being an owner instead of a broker. And so that's really what was like the catalyst of starting to look at rental property and the idea of passive income, the idea of residual income. And and then I got into some of the residential stuff. I flipped some houses. I did a lot of wholesaling, did a lot of turnkey rentals for other people, and kind of just fell into building my own portfolio, mostly residential single family. And then I bought.
So the first deal you did as an investor was residential?
Yeah, it was a duplex that I
Okay.
bought in Charleston, South Carolina. So we had a bad winter. I moved down to Charleston, South Carolina, and just for lifestyle kind of idea. And this is right after the market tanked, so early 2009 or like April 2009, I think I bought that place. And I know we discussed this offline, but I had probably $8,000 or $9,000 saved up at the time. I'm a punk 23-year-old kid. Nobody's going to lend me private money.
All right.
I've never done a deal before, and I went into this like analysis paralysis phase of like just reading books and trying to understand everything. And I realized
How long was that?
what's that?
How long were you in that analysis process?
It was I was doing a little bit of stuff on the side, and then I was like, I just need to focus on this full time. And I probably spent almost 6 months just like studying every single day. And I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing until I actually do it. Like you can't tell somebody, teach them how to swim by reading it in the book. They have to actually go in the water and figure it out. So that's what I did, man. I found the cheapest house on the entire MLS. They were asking 25 grand for it, and I didn't have that kind of money. I had a credit card with a $3,000 limit, and I had, like I said, about $8,000 or $9,000 saved up in my bank account. And so I went to one of these guru seminars, and they're like, you can call up your credit card company and teach them and ask them to raise your credit card limit. And so I called up my credit card company. I was like, hey, I'm about to make a big purchase. I need you guys to increase my limit. And mind you, I don't have a car loan. I don't have a home loan. I don't have any credit. I've never done anything other than open up this credit card like 12 months before. Okay. That's the only credit that I've ever had. And they're like, well, how much of a credit line limit do you need? And I was like, I need $100,000 like right now. And they're like, absolutely not. And so they laughed at me. And I said, well, how much can you give me like right now? I'm about to go make this purchase. And they gave me $15,005. So I went back to that house, the cheapest house in the entire MLS, and I made an offer on it. I think like 10 or 12,000. We went back and forth. I ended up getting it for $14,000, which was like my maximum allowable offer because I didn't have any more money than that. So I remember I went and got a balance transfer check for that credit card and actually took it to closing. And I gave it to the closing attorney, and it says Chase MasterCard, whatever it was. And he's like, what the hell am I supposed to do with this? He goes, you can go and deposit this and bring me like a certified bank check or send a wire. I was like, dude, I don't know. This is my first deal. So,
yeah,
the next day, ended up closing on the property. And that's just, it kind of goes to say that a lot of people don't get involved in real estate or don't get involved in whatever endeavor because they don't think they have the resources. Hey, I don't have the time. I don't have the money. I don't have the knowledge or the experience in doing that. The reality is I didn't have any of those things either, but I was resourceful. And resourcefulness is the ultimate resource because if you're resourceful, you can go find any of those other resources. And I think that's one of my unique abilities. I've been able to problem solve and critically think in a way that gets problem solved and able to move on, solve another problem, solve another problem, solve another problem. The more problems you solve, the more money you make. You take a look at the most successful or the most powerful people in the entire world. They're CEOs and presidents, people running nations, and they're in those positions because they're the best problem solvers. So if you can solve problems, you can make a lot of money and gain a lot of power and influence in society. So I guess that's something that I kind of realized early on. Bought that place on my credit card, put a couple $1,000s from my bank account that I had saved up into the property. I did all the work. I changed out the carpet. I changed out the light fixtures. I painted. I did all the landscaping, contacted all, and then I printed out a bunch of flyers, went and knocked on doors up and down the house, up and down the street of that house and on a street either way, on either side of that one, and held an open house. And had a bunch of people come through on one weekend and ended up selling it to one of the neighbors for $33,000. So I made like 14 G's. And this is the worst real estate economy in 80 years. And I'm a punk 23 years old. And I've never done a deal before. And I just made, like I said, $13,000, $14,000. So I'm like, Let me do it again. So I did it again. Lost a bunch of money on like the fourth deal I did.
Yeah.
Fortunately, I made money on the first three, so I was like, "That's all right. I know I can win in this." I think if I would have lost on that first deal, it would have
Would
been
have
tough.
discouraged you.
Yeah. And then I got into wholesaling. Understood that I didn't need to use my time or my own money or my own credit in order to invest in real estate. I can go and contract a house, sell the contract, and make a fee on that. So did a lot of that, wholesale, um, a whole bunch. And then, eventually you meet people who have the time, or who don't have the time, but they have the money, and they need somebody with the time, with the experience, with the knowledge on how to invest in real estate. And they came to me and they said, "Hey, listen, what if I put up some money and you do the work and we'll split it 50-50?" So I did some deals where I split 50-50 and bought my first couple of rental properties. I remember I was like 24, 25 years old, and I had like 8 or 9 rental properties. My total overhead, like on a monthly basis, was something like $2,000 or something. Was my entire lifestyle for my house and my rent and paying for my car and all that other stuff. And those like 8 or 9 properties threw off about $3,000 a month in cash flow. And so I remember sitting there and being like, I'm 25 years old. I'm financially free. I'm not rich, but I'm financially free.
Right.
These assets that are paying for my lifestyle every single, and I can go to the beach, I can go hang out, and I'm not going to
cash flow right here.
That's it.
That's like getting the janitor card, right? And instead of the doctor card.
Yeah. So it was, I was all excited about it. And, I still had aspirations and goals to do some bigger stuff, and met up with another couple guys who had about $1 million that they wanted to put into play, and essentially invested that with me. I gave up 70% of all the deals I did with them, but I realized, and it was probably about 200 deals, but I realized that I needed to get that experience.
Right.
Have those deals under my belt, build my resume in a manner that then I can posture up with other private lenders, with banks, with sellers, and all. Here's my resume. Here's everything that I've accomplished. Here's everything that I've done, and that was really important. So, a lot of times people are like, how can you give up 70% of a deal? Oh my goodness.
Hey, 70% of 200 deals is a lot better than 100% of 20 or 50 you might have been able to do on your own.
And that's the way I looked at it. You could either have 100% of a grape that's this big,
yeah,
30% of a watermelon that's this big, and 30% of a watermelon still has a lot more squeeze than 100% of a grape. There's still a lot more juice in it.
Yeah.
So that was kind of the mindset of it. And, that partnership kind of went south. For whatever reason, we had to liquidate our portfolio. We had almost 200 units, and liquidated that a few years back. And I've been doing my own thing ever since. So I've been able to raise some private money, been able to bring on some joint venture partners, and build up a team. I now own a management company with about 20 employees. I have 5 people on my core real estate investment team, and I own about a little over 1,320 units across 5 different states: Ohio, South Carolina, Georgia, Florida, and Texas. Mostly apartment buildings, a little bit of office. We own some vacation rentals down in Florida, and looking at some other different asset classes and stuff too. But
nice.
Primarily apartments is what we do.
So you hit on a lot of things in a short amount of time, and I want to make sure that our audience doesn't brush over them. So one, you knew what was possible just by being on the broker side of things, right? Like you had that deal, or you did the math and you're like, I'm definitely on the wrong side of this.
Yeah, I mean, I've never done it, but I saw somebody else could do it, right. And it was one of those things like, this guy's making money. I'm going to get rich doing this thing.
Right.
This guy's an idiot, and I have more of a work ethic and blah blah blah. So, being able to see somebody else accomplish it and then realize that I can do the same thing, just builds that belief of knowing that it's possible.
Now, what you didn't do though is you didn't jump right into going and figuring out how to get your own commercial property on your very next deal. So tell me about that. Like what, because I think a lot of people can make that mistake of just thinking they're just going to go for the move. Maybe it's not a mistake. I don't know. But, I've heard plenty of people say you don't have to do residential in order to get into commercial. It certainly helps, right? It helps for you to get some experience. It helps you to do something that's a little bit, probably a lot more inventory and faster to close deals. But, Tell me what was going through your mind and why you decided to jump into.
Here's the thing. If you try to jump into commercial real estate on your own and you're not partnered up with somebody who's already doing it or has experience in that, you're swimming with some of the big sharks.
Mhm.
Like they're more sophisticated investors. They've been around the block. They have access to a lot more capital than you probably have access to. They've done deals before. And a lot in the commercial realm um, is like a lot of the brokers don't just list properties. I mean, you do that, you see that on the MLS and stuff, but if you're a commercial broker, typically they get the listing. They know who the top players in town are, and they're shopping it behind the scenes kind of as a pocket listing
So you
because
had that insight already. You knew what it was going to take to
yeah,
get
I've
in.
seen a little bit of that and realizing, how am I going to compete with a $8,000 bank account, a $2,000, $3,000 credit card limit?
Mhm.
How am I going to go compete with somebody who's got millions of dollars and, hundreds of millions of dollars of property? And, um, and I guess it was just maybe a self-limiting thought that I didn't think I could. I think you can definitely get involved in commercial real estate without having experience. Um, as long as there's some value that you can bring to the table. Can you find deals?
Mhm.
That's valuable. Are you a great operator? Maybe somebody else is bringing the money and getting the financing and funding the project, but you're a great operator and you can physically manage renovations and manage properties. Maybe you can get some equity in a deal that way. Maybe you have a great balance sheet and liquidity. Maybe you're a doctor and you have a great income, but you don't have any experience. So maybe you
Mhm.
can help sponsor the loan or bring some investment capital to the table. There's a lot of different ways that people can get involved in commercial. And it goes back to that whole concept of, you know, you can take a watermelon, split it up into a lot of different pieces, and it's big enough where everybody can get paid.
Mhm.
Everybody, um, there's enough juice in the squeeze for everyone in that deal. It's a lot harder to do on a $50,000 turnkey rental property. There's
Right.
not much juice in the squeeze on something like that, or even a $200,000, retail flip. Doesn't matter. So,
So
yeah,
did you have those resources when you were a broker? Did you have the private money resources, or did you know how to find the
no,
deals, or you just knew that it was?
it was just straight work, man.
Gotcha.
I would literally go door knock on different businesses saying, "Hey, are you looking for a second location?" And I would meet them, and then I'd go try to find a landlord who had a vacant space. I'd send them a letter and say, "Hey, I have somebody looking for space. Can I come and look at your building? Can I show your unit?" And it was just work. This is right when the economy was like starting to tank, so everybody was scared, everybody was worried, and and then I'd meet some of these landlords, and they'd see how hard I was working in order to bring different people through their property, and then they'd maybe give me a listing. With commercial, you don't need that many listings in order to make a good amount of money because they're big payouts. Like if you
Mhm.
do a commercial lease, like my commission um, on a $2 million commercial lease it's like $60,000. So that, 50% of that was split with my broker, and then it's not paid out. It's paid out like over 24 months versus like all initially. So you
Gotcha.
see all that money immediately. Um, but those are big commissions,
Mhm.
and you don't have to close that many of those. But I saw a few of those deals, and just realized I was on the wrong side of the coin. I wanted to be receiving the residual income month after month, year after year, doing something one time, getting paid on it over and over again, instead of trading my time for money. And so that was the real, you know, catalyst, I'd say. But
So since
why didn't I dive into commercial immediately? I think maybe I don't know. I don't know how I could have. Um, I think you can, especially if you got some experience. I guess just for me personally, I don't know, it wouldn't have worked for me.
yeah.
I didn't believe in myself, I guess, enough at the time.
Right, because if you did have a partner, it probably would have made it a lot easier. Like if you had a partner who and you just knew how to go find the deals, you already knew how to evaluate a deal, right? You knew what a deal
Yeah.
was worth. I mean, just being a broker.
I guess I didn't know that Like, I'll give you an example. Once you have that experience, then you can help sponsor. I didn't even know what the word was, but it's called sponsorship of
Mhm.
commercial deals. So, like, there's people that bring me deals now that don't have any experience in commercial real estate at all, but so they need somebody like me to sponsor their deal, and they
Yeah.
get equity in the deal. I come in from a balance sheet standpoint, a liquidity standpoint. I help get the financing, raise the private money. Um, from an operational standpoint, I can help direct and advise and consult on that front. And so all they did was they went and got the deal, and they want to be the boots on the ground. They get a piece of the equity for it, and then I get some equity for being able to help come in and sponsor. I didn't realize that that was available back then, but it is available. It's totally doable where anybody with any background, any experience, or no experience can get involved in commercial real estate if they know somebody like me who has experience and can help sponsor their deal.
It's no different than what we tell our audience in wholesaling. It's like I've talked to Uber drivers who are like, look, I literally have no money. I'm just doing Uber to be able to keep the lights on. I got no savings, no credit. I'm like, great. Well, you're a great property scout for leads. You talk to people all day long. You drive around all day long. You know, you can be making calls for sale by owners. And if you find a lead, if you find a good deal, I'd be happy to be your built-in buyer. I'd be happy to do the deal with you. And therefore you spent no money on marketing, no money on setting up any kind of a business, nothing. And you can still get paid. So I encourage people to, network and reach out to other investors, because whatever you may not have in capital or experience or whatever, you can add value in other ways.
Big time.
Awesome.
It takes years to develop that experience of failing forward and, getting kicked in the teeth a little bit, dealing with contractors. Like, I mean, it's cliche, but you say, hey, how many times can you get knocked down and then get back up again?
Mm-hmm.
That's part of the learning process. You just got to be willing to go through that. A lot of people want the victory, but they don't want the battle.
Yeah, right.
You don't get the victory unless you go through the battle. Like that's
right.
part of getting. You can't get a win unless there's some sort of adversity they have to overcome. And a lot of people just want the win, and they don't realize that they have to go through the battle. So it's to just own the process, just own it. It's part of it. It comes with territory, realizing that the prize at the end of the rainbow is absolutely worth it.
So tell me when you finally did make the leap into commercial, when was that transition? Was that after you liquidated all of the residential?
Yeah, so I did a lot of wholesaling. I bought a couple like single family rentals and some mostly low end stuff, kind of like rougher areas, C, D class kind of areas. And, you cut your teeth on that kind of stuff because you think that's where you need to start because that's the cheapest property. And can't lose that much. Yeah, but it's a tough area to start it. You definitely learn pretty quick in those kinds of areas, people stealing from you and houses getting kicked in and all that. But, no, I got it. I was doing 2013 is when I partnered up with those guys with a couple of bucks, and we did everything. We did retail flips. I was still wholesaling. I was high-end retail flips, low-end retail flips. We did some lower end single-family rental properties, and came across just a smoking deal on an 8-unit apartment building, and it was something where it was like so good that I couldn't pass it up, and I knew nothing about it, but I was like, forget about it. Let's just buy it. Who cares? Let's see what happens.
So we're not even talking hundreds of units, just an 8-unit apartment building. All right.
Yeah. So I don't know. I can't speak to getting involved in a multi-hundred unit, apartment building from day one, because that's not what I've done. I would never speak on that because I don't have the experience, and I don't teach people or coach based on what I read in a book. I only speak from my own personal experience. So I started getting involved in real estate by buying small buildings. I bought an 8-unit, then I bought another 8-unit, I bought a 14-unit, then I bought a package of 2 or 3 buildings in a row that had 23 units, and then I bought a 31-unit, then I bought another 13-unit, and then I just kept on growing this portfolio. A lot of times, once you kind of get into the commercial realm, it's hard to go out and get a loan for a 100-unit apartment building if you don't already own 100 units.
Mm-hmm.
Now, those 100 units don't have to be all in one location. But if you have, 8 or 9 different buildings that collectively are 100 units, a bank will give you a loan to go get another 100 units. So it creates a snowball, kind of a compound effect, where you can double every time. And so, I got up to about 150 units. I actually had to liquidate them, but before I liquidated them, I was able to invest in another deal down in Georgia that was about another 80 units, and then there's an 84 unit, and then I bought a 194 units. So not do you see what's happening? I'm doubling
right.
acquisition. And then I picked up another couple hundred units just on miscellaneous deals up here in Cleveland. And then I just took down a portfolio a couple months ago of 730 units. My portfolio size was about 650. And because I had that size portfolio, I was able to go and bid on this
Wow.
other portfolio of 730 units, 5 buildings, ranging from 120 units up to like 200 units each building. And I won the bid on that. So I was able to, again, double my portfolio. Now I have about $100 million, just shy of $100 million in real estate. It allows me to go and bid on skyscrapers and like crazy big stuff that I would never. So like that's what you see happening in commercial real estate.
In just 5 years.
Yeah, yeah. So
5 years ago, you were using a credit card to buy your first rehab.
that was in 2009. I bought my first.
Oh, okay,
I
gotcha.
wholesale for a couple of years.
Right, okay.
My first apartment building, my first 8 unit, 5 years ago.
Okay.
And I really, I was only up to about 400 units about a little over 12 months ago, and I sat back and I looked at my life. Like, if you're not sitting there like taking probably at least twice a year, maybe quarterly, sitting back and just like planning your life and reflecting on what's working, what's not working, what do you like doing, what you don't like doing, and spending time on that stuff, like you're really missing out. You need to be doing that. So about 12 months ago, I sat back and I looked at where was I spending my time and where was I creating majority of my wealth. And I realized that 90% of my wealth came from apartment buildings and only 10% of my time went towards apartment buildings. So I'm like, this is so backwards. Why aren't I dedicating all my team, all my resources, and all my time to more apartment buildings?
What was taking up the rest of the time?
We're still doing turnkey flips.
Okay.
So we did about 80 to 100 houses a year for the past 3 years on turnkey
So
side.
you'd
and we started
place a tenant, you'd fix it up, put a tenant in it, and then sell it?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I'm out of Cleveland, Ohio. So we'd find something that's like a C-class kind of neighborhood, buy it for $30,000, $40,000, put 5-10 grand into it just to like clean it up and make sure it's good, clean, safe, and functional, put a tenant in place. And then we package it. We opened up a management company also. And then we'd sell it as kind of like a all done for you service
Yeah.
to entrepreneurs, white collar professionals, anybody who had some money who wanted to invest in real estate but didn't have the time or the expertise to go and do all that stuff. So we did a lot of that. And then the management company, ton of work.
I've heard.
It's you're just a punching bag all the time. So it's management company is very, very difficult, and we made no money. It was taking up 90% of our time. So yeah, I mean, I reflected on it 12 months ago. I said, hey, we're not buying any more single family homes. Cut it all off. Like what? We were buying, 6, 7, 8 of them a month. And I said, we're not doing any more. We'll only dedicate time to apartment buildings. And over the past 12 months, we've gone from just shy of 400 units to now just shy of 1,400 units. Wow. 12 months. So it's one of those things where, like, I mean, call it whatever you will. I think there's definitely forces in the universe that are like, if you make a decision, you draw a line in the sand, you make a commitment and put it out there and tell everybody you're willing to burn your ships and not go back, the universe will respond. Doors will open, opportunities will open, and that's what's happened for us. So I just doubled down on that, and really a lot of the growth, like I said, is all compounding. It took me 9 years to become an overnight success. So.
Yeah, I think they call it, is it the reticular activator? You buy a car and then all of a sudden you see that car everywhere. It's the same. When you make a decision in your business, then every networking opportunity, everything that you see, you have that kind of in the back of your mind. You're trying to put those pieces together. You see it as an opportunity for you to fulfill on that decision you made, as opposed to being distracted, which is so easy for an entrepreneur to get distracted with so many opportunities.
Yeah, that's something I'm going through right now. A lot of people who reach out to me for like coffee or lunch or like I'm a giver. I love doing stuff like this.
Yeah.
Give on a larger scale.
One to many.
But I mean, we were talking about some lifestyle stuff at the beginning of this. Like, no offense to sitting down and grabbing coffee with somebody, but I feel like a whore if somebody just like sits down
right.
And then just like they bought me coffee. Like I would rather be spending that time with my family. I'd rather be spending my time with my kids. and it's one of those things where like you want to give to other people, but at the same time, it's like I'll give you an example. You know when you get off the freeway and you see a homeless person standing there holding a sign, thinking like, "Hey, anything helps." We all want to give them money, but what are they going to do with the money? Are they going to go buy booze with it? Are they going to go buy drugs with it? Or are they going to go buy a shaving kit and clean themselves up and go to a job interview? I don't know. And I don't know what somebody's going to do with the information that I give them either. Are they just going to like discard it and never put it to use? Or are they actually going to do something with it? So, I found that I give group time to the masses,
Yeah.
and I give individual time to the people who are willing to pay for it, or have proven themselves in some way that they're going to do something with the information. So
I would expect nothing less from a fellow real estate investor who it's all about leverage, right? If you can create something and answer the same questions to thousands of people, and only have to put in, half hour, it's bigger than just that coffee time.
Yeah, bigger.
Yeah. So a lot of people ask, both in residential, so I'm sure it's the same in commercial, how do you find deals? And I've heard a few conversations that, the market is high right now, right? Which is great because it means money's available, right? Money's cheap. But I've heard in commercial that cap rates are compressed. So does that mean that there are no deals out there? Does that mean that you have to work harder to find deals, or are you not seeing any issue in finding deals?
12 months, as hot as the market is.
What's that?
I picked up 1,000 units in the past 12 months, as hot as the market is. So there's deals to be found out there. The issue is, so first of all, cap rates is return on investment. So if you want a property brings in $100,000 a year in net income, and you want a 10% return on investment, you'd pay $1 million for that. Makes sense? Mm-hmm. So the difference is, I know there's a lot of residential people watching, so I just want to make sure they know what a cap rate is. So all it is a return on investment in real estate, commercial real estate. So when you're saying cap rates are being compressed, that same $100,000 of net income, maybe somebody's willing to go spend $2 million for it, and the cap rate or the return on investment comes down to 5%.
Right.
And that's happening all over the place right now. Properties getting bid up because money is so cheap, because nobody wants money in Bitcoin. Nobody wants money in the stock market. Everybody wants money in something tangible right now because they're not sure, how long this awesome economy is going to last. They're all investing in real estate. There's a lot of money out there. A lot of people are making money. Business is going great. Economy is going great. They're looking to just park their money somewhere. So when you have a lot of capital, you just want to get any kind of return on investment, not, 0.5% that you would get if you put it in the bank. So, there's a lot of deep pockets out there that are buying up commercial real estate. I'm kind of in that realm where I buy a lot of stuff that's 30 to 100 units, where it's bigger than the small investors, but smaller than like the institutional investors. And that's kind of my niche. And I just keep on trying to pick up properties. And occasionally, I get a 125 unit, I get a 200 unit, like this portfolio I just picked up. Sometimes we do a little bit of development stuff too. But the reality is, don't go through brokers in order to buy real estate.
Right.
That's stuff that gets bid up like crazy. And again, brokers, if they're going to list something on the MLS or they list something on LoopNet, it's because they already shopped it around to the top 20 or 30 buyers in town, and all those buyers said no because it was a crappy deal. So if you see something that's listed with a broker, it's either a residential broker who doesn't know what they're doing in the commercial realm, or it's a deal that everybody passed on because it's not really a deal. So those are not the kinds of projects that you want to invest in.
So what are you looking for any specific cap rates, or how do you decide a good deal from a bad deal?
Yeah. So first of all, if you're going to buy something that's already stabilized, you're not going to get that good of a deal on it. Price. I don't pay retail price for anything. So I'm looking typically for wholesale deals that I can force the appreciation by doing some value add.
Yeah.
Doing sweat equity, same thing that we do in the residential realm, just transferring it over to commercial. And so I'm looking for distressed owners or distressed management, distressed properties, and then we go in and we take a look at what the property looks like, and we bid on it based on that. So we're usually going off market. We're almost always going off market. I've developed a reputation now where, because I'm kind of the apartment buyer, anything I'd say $500,000 up to 10, $15 million in Cleveland, people usually bring it to me first. I'm usually one of the first people to see that. But it takes time to build that reputation up.
Right.
So, the same way that you find deals, off-market deals in residential, you can do the same thing with commercial. Instead of sending direct mail and postcards to residential sellers, I just started sending it to commercial sellers, and I pepper them, because there's not as many. I pepper them every single month and just keep on hitting them, so that whenever they were ready to sell, they contact me. I put it out to my list of this is where we get a lot of our deals from, is I just send an email every single week to my buyers list and my wholesaler list and my broker list. So everybody who's already on my email blast list for residential, most of those people don't know what to do with a commercial deal that comes across their phone. So they usually just throw it off to the side and they don't think about it again. So by staying top of mind with those individuals, whenever they do come across a commercial deal that they would discard anyways, now they're like, well, let me just shoot it over to Tim and his team and just see if something comes of it. And so we just bought a smoking deal, bought a 50-unit apartment building for $1.4 million. That's already 85% occupied. We're going to go put some love into it, but we'll be all into it for like 1.8, 1.9 million. And this thing will appraise for around 3.3 to 3.5 million. So on that, we'll be able to refinance. The bank will give us 80% loan to value when we refinance. So if it appraises for 3.3, we'll be able to take about 2.6 million off the table, and we're only into it for 1.9. So we pay off our short-term loan.
Yeah.
That leaves us with $700,000 of loan proceeds, which are non-taxable income that goes into our pockets with one deal.
Wow.
And that was a wholesaler. This girl didn't even have a cell phone. She was using a burner phone to call us.
Wow.
Deal, and we paid her a $14,000 fee on it.
So was that just the property itself was distressed? Like it's 85% now, but if they didn't improve the property, they're going to start losing more renters?
Yeah,
Was the seller distressed?
for real low. They didn't take care of the property. It had some bugs in it. The parking lot was falling apart. The windows were real old. Again, we bought it for 1.45 or something, I think is what we ended up closing on it for. And we put another almost $500,000 into the property. It's a lot of money to put into a property. So it needed some serious TLC, but the owner was also just tired. They've owned it for 10, 15, 20 years. They bought it for way less than what we bought it from them for. And they were able to make some money on it. They were happy with the price. They didn't have to put any more work into it or deal with the management or anything like that. What's nice is we already had all the management in place. We already managed a bunch of properties in the area. And so it was easy for us to transition into taking it over, making those improvements, stabilizing the tenant base. And then we'll have it, like I said, refinance within 12 months at a higher price point. We're going to take a bunch of money off the table. And then out of that, we can either reinvest in other deals or we can just sit on it, disperse it, lifestyle up. Doesn't matter.
So
what's nice is I still have a cash flowing asset that covers the debt service and throws off another, I think it's like $75,000 a year in cash flow after all expenses, after all debt service is paid.
Wow. That's awesome. That's an awesome deal.
Well, I want to do a deal like that a month,
Yeah.
for a week. They're out there. Like the issue is you just got to find those off-market deals. Look for sellers who have owned the property for 15, 20 years or longer. You can get that list by any list company. They can pull that list. And I would spend a lot of time mailing to them or meeting with them. And then the other thing is I get a lot of deals from business owners, entrepreneurs who thought they could get involved in real estate on their own without having any experience in commercial real estate. And they just get kicked in the teeth from it. And so they take their eye off the ball in their primary business. They're still going through a learning curve in the apartment buildings, and they just lose both. They lose everything, and then we come in and buy it for pennies on the dollar. I buy a lot of buildings that way.
Like a retired doctor or something who had the extra money and just
they
didn't look at it like it was another business that they were going to have to manage.
I mean, it is a different business. It's like, hey, just because you eat in a restaurant doesn't mean you know how to run.
That's a very good analogy.
Same thing with real estate. Just because you live in a house doesn't mean you know how to own rental property and manage a
Right.
rental property. And so there's definitely a learning curve there. I bought the 730 unit portfolio from a couple Wall Street guys, big bucks, looking to park their money somewhere. Bought a bunch of buildings down in Georgia, and didn't pay attention to it. Didn't give it the attention that it needed. Didn't have a local joint venture partner or somebody boots on the ground who can help manage it. Gave it to the cheapest management company, which is never a good idea, and then just sat on it. And so they were too busy doing what they're doing up in New York and didn't pay attention to it. And they dropped below 50% occupancy. So we were able to come in, and that's tough to buy that kind of property because there's not a lot of lenders who would lend on something that's that distressed.
Mm.
So what happened was they had it under contract with another buyer who couldn't get the deal done. They didn't have the right lenders, they didn't have the right experience in dealing with that kind of a portfolio, and they dragged these sellers through the mud for like 6 or 7 months. And so when it came back up on the market, this was listed with a broker, but so we paid attention to it over time. And when it came back up on the market, we went in and realized that their hot button, like their main motivation for getting this thing sold, was to just get it sold. It wasn't about price; it was about having it done and not thinking about it any longer. And so what we did is we went in and made a very postured offer, with our chest puffed out, saying, "Hey, we'll put a $200,000 of non-refundable earnest money down because we're that confident that we can close on this thing." And when we did that, there were other people with about $2 million that they bid above what our bid was, and they went with us because we showed that much confidence in being able to close and realizing
Nice.
that was again the hot button that they were looking for.
So let's talk about money real quick. How do you find money? Is it just as simple as going to the bank? I know, you went from the, borrowing money on a credit card for the first residential house to raising $4 million in 48 hours. So
Yes.
how do you find the money to fund these deals?
First of all, it's about the crowd that you hang out with. I hang out with entrepreneurs. I hang out with people who have money. Where does the money hang out? Money hangs out at country clubs. Money hangs out at golf clubs. Money hangs out at um, uh, cigar bars. I don't like go hang out with
Masterminds.
masterminds. Money hangs out at masterminds a lot, and so I plug into a lot of different mastermind. Not only real estate masterminds, because usually, like most of my real estate guys are not my best lenders because they're looking for active
Right.
returns. So they're thinking, I need to be making 20, 30, 40, 50% of my money annually. And that's what's going through, because I could go and flip this house and I can make that much money. There's a difference between actively investing and passively investing and the kind of returns that you can expect. And so I like hanging out with masterminds of entrepreneurs who are not real estate related, because now I'm not competing with anybody else in the room to go and
Mm-hmm.
raise money. And secondly, I'm like the edified expert in real estate. Um, and so they're coming to me asking me questions, and it's easy to raise money from people. They're not familiar with, not that they're unsophisticated or anything, but they're not familiar with hard money lending rates, not familiar with um, uh, traditional syndication models and stuff that maybe a hedge fund or a REIT would expect. And so I'm able to educate them, say, hey, listen, I'll pay you a fixed return. I give my investors some equity on the back end. So once they get their money back, they still keep a piece of the equity in perpetuity forever. So they're getting a piece of that $700,000 refi proceeds. They're getting a piece of that $75,000 a year in cash flow. They're getting a piece of the future sales proceeds. We make $1 million, they're going to get a piece of that if we go to resell it, down the road. So, not only having a fixed rate of return while the money's in play, but then getting that all paid back and still maintaining kind of like an asset, really building long-term wealth is, a big deal with them. So, I'm able to create and craft a juicier return than most other residential investors because they're just doing transactional flips. I can pay somebody a fixed rate of return plus give them back end equity, which doesn't cost me anything up front. It's just based on the value that we create over time. So it's a couple different things. One, it's hanging out with the right groups of people.
Mm-hmm.
Two, it's telling people what you're doing. If you're not
Right.
promoting you, you're not promoting your business, you're not promoting what you're doing, telling people what you're doing. Social media is very easy to do that. I get a lot of my people who inquire on doing deals with me. Either they want to sell me deals, buy deals from me, joint venture with me, lend me money, or pay me to coach them. All comes from my social media stuff, my presence the content that I give on social media. So it's easy to be able to just walk through a house and say, hey, here's something that I'm doing. Here's what to look for in the basement, cracks in the walls, or the mechanicals, and here's why we picked this color paint or whatever, and just give value that way. Or even if you're not an expert, you don't have any deals going on, why not just go and interview somebody who is an expert?
Right.
Do a podcast, just do Facebook Lives, talk to other people who are doing cool things, and give value that way. Like there's a lot of opportunity there. So um, it's hanging out where the money hangs out, telling people what you have going on, and then paying a good return. I pay
It's
my
pretty
like a lot
simple.
of people try to get their investors down. I only want to pay them 6% or 7% on their money. I try to figure out a way how to pay my investors more, because then they're not going to go anywhere else. Somebody
Right.
dangles a carrot in front of their face. They would say, no, I'm doing deals with Tim. Tim's fair. He's honest. He always repays me. He tells me, or I always get my payments when he tells me I'm going to get them. And I got many deals going on, and I want to build those long-term relationships with people who are hustlers, who can be making money for many decades to come. So I don't have to keep on going out and chasing new money all the time. It makes my life easier too. So overpay your
Relationships,
lenders.
no matter what business you're in, long-term relationships are huge, but
Yeah.
especially with with your lenders. So that's great. And then you have short-term lenders, but then any long-term, you just refi with
Yep. So
again.
I usually take down my properties with like a hedge fund usually lends me the money, or like a REIT for like 80% of the value. And then I raise the private money for the down payment and like maybe some operating capital. And that's how I blend on the acquisition side. And then the entire goal is to make sure that I can refinance out and pay everybody off when I go to refi. And that requires me to find better deals, because I have to be all in for essentially less than 75% of the after appraised
Praised
value.
value.
You know
Yeah.
what I mean? The after repair or the appraised value on the back end. So it forces me to find great deals that I can have a lot of equity, build up a lot of equity in, to ensure that if it's not going to appraise on the back end and I can't cash out my investors, then I'm just not going to do the deal. It's not a good enough deal for me. Because as you know, this is all cyclical. If interest rates rise over the next couple of years, and all of a sudden, let's say I go and buy a property at a 5 cap right now, and all of a sudden interest rates rise to 6.5, 7%. Dude, you're not gonna be able to sell that at a 5 cap. You're gonna have to
Right.
sell it at 8 cap or 9 cap or a 10 cap, which essentially cuts your value in half from what you bought it for. So you're gonna be sitting on that forever. And what a lot of people don't realize is, in commercial real estate, you don't get a 30-year loan term. You get a
Right.
5, 7, maybe a 10-year loan term. So in 5 years, you have to go refinance. What if interest rates don't drop again? What if you don't pay down enough principal yet? Then you're going to be looking at yourself and thinking, I can't sell the property. I can't refinance the property because the value's not there. Like, what are you going to do? And that's when a lot of people are going to lose their ass. And I'm going to come in, swoop in, and buy up all their property for pennies on the dollar.
Got it. So that's how you're getting the cap rates that you want right now, and buying below is you're specifically doing what we do in residential, going after direct to seller, motivated, distressed, and then adding value and improving the
Dude,
property.
I've never been to a seminar. I've never read a book on commercial real estate. Like, all I did is I took all the residential stuff that I learned and knew, and I just deployed that into commercial. And that's how I built my business.
Awesome.
And I think you could probably do it faster if you go out to a seminar, or if you partner up with somebody who's had experience in this stuff.
For sure.
The reality is you don't have to.
Right.
Like, if you have, again, the resourcefulness and the desire and the will to go out and do it, then you can absolutely make it happen.
So what is one action that you would tell a residential investor or a wholesaler right now if they wanted to start adding that into their they wanted to start adding commercial to their portfolio, or at least wholesaling commercial. I'm assuming you can still do that. So
Yeah.
how would that work?
I just wholesaled an 11 unit. It was too small for me. And I wholesaled it and made, after all fees and closing costs, made $87,000 on it. In
Not
December.
bad.
So I just did that. I just flipped an 18-unit apartment building, made a little over $100,000 on that one, owned it for less than 90 days. It was just too small, kind of like a C plus kind of area that I didn't want to be in long term. So, but I got it for a smoking deal, and I had to put a little bit of money into it. And within 10 days, we had under contract with the other buyer, and I never even saw the building, never even walked it. But my team went over there, my contractor went through there, and they flipped the building, or like just renovated the units, marketed the property. We got under contract. The guy's loan took 90 days to close. Otherwise, we would have flipped this thing to a cash buyer in 12 days, made $100,000 on it. So just like you can flip single family houses and wholesale single family houses, you can wholesale and flip apartment buildings. Totally feasible as well. And if you can't sell it, who gives a shit? Because you still have the cash flow coming in on a monthly basis.
Right. Yeah.
Probably getting an awesome return on it. And you can turn around and refinance it. It's easier to get money on a commercial property than it is to get a residential loan. I'll give you an example. It's easier for me to get the loan on this $3.3 million 50-unit building than it was for me to get a $350,000 loan on a vacation rental I just bought down in Florida. It's insane. Absolutely insane. Took them like 60 days asking me for all sorts of documentation, all sorts of nonsense to get a $350,000 loan on a house in Florida that's going to be a vacation rental. And the difference, like for me to go get a $2 million or $2.5 million loan is literally, here's the rent roll, here's the financials. Oh, Tim's got decent credit. Okay, great. He's got experience doing this. Great. And perfect. Okay, let's stroke a check for this loan amount. It's wild. It's so counterintuitive. You think but it's expected.
More money would be harder, but
it's expected
they're lending on a business
that you know what you're doing, because it's like a more sophisticated group of investors. So residential has all these rules and red tape and regulations in place to protect, the mom and pop first-time home buyers and the people whose home is their largest asset. So there's
Right.
a lot of that protections and safety nets in place that really run you through the ringer. You're expected to be more of a professional in the commercial realm, and so because of it, there's not as much regulation, and it's a lot easier to get money for it. So
I got to assume that the banks are also, it's less of a risk, right? Even as the vacation rental is a business, right? But it only has one tenant, at a time, whereas that's going to pay for that loan.
Yep.
Whereas, a 100-unit building, and they see that there's 85 people paying rent every month, they're lending on an ATM machine that, pays every single month. So,
and apartment buildings have been around, and mixed use buildings have been around since, the dawn of civilization. Whereas, really the single family stuff, and especially vacation rentals are very new. So it's still like an uncharted territory, and the risk tolerance isn't really there. But even residential, like that's all from suburban sprawl. A lot of the single family houses out there, outside of like being in rural areas, it's kind of newer. So because commercial's been around for a long time, it doesn't have all that red tape that comes with it. But to go back to your original question, like what's one piece of advice? I would find a coach, find a mentor, find a group to plug into, and if you really do want to learn commercial real estate or apartment buildings and how to invest in that kind of stuff, make sure you're finding somebody and you get mentored by somebody who knows what they're doing and has experience in that realm. It'll shortcut you. What took me 9 years to do, you can do in 9 months.
And where do you find those types of people? Like in residential, it's easy. There's a meetup group or a RIA, going on every single day. Where do you find that for the commercial space?
Yeah, well, I know we're going to be talking about doing some stuff together. I do a little bit of coaching, so if you guys want to hit me up, I'm happy to kind of plug you into one of my events. And we do.
Yeah, you got an event coming up here pretty soon, right?
Yeah, in August 14th through 16th, I think it is.
If you guys want to check that out, that's commercialisawesome.com. We got a link set up for you to get all the details on that. And but are there typically, RIAs or meetups that, a bunch of apartment owners get together and
There's you can Google search like landlord associations. There might be
associations? Okay.
stuff like that. Um, Dude, you know what I did? Is I looked up all the landlords in town in a specific community that I wanted to invest in. And there were about, I don't know, maybe a dozen people who owned a lot of property. And instead of sending them a postcard that cost me 40 cents to say, hey, I want to buy buildings, or are you looking to sell, or whatever, I spent $100 on each person and sent them a gift basket. And I said, hey, I got some money, looking to invest in the area. Noticed you own some property, just trying to make some connections with some awesome investors. You know, would love to meet you sometime, blah, 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 talk shop. And
It's that resourcefulness again.
maybe we can make some money together sooner or later. Nothing pushy, nothing, whatever. But who the hell's sending gift baskets these days? No, not a lot of people are sending gift baskets, especially on a random Tuesday.
Yeah.
So when they get that, I got 100% callback rate on that. I said, yeah, hey, what's up? And so I only met with one of them in person. All the other ones I just talked on the phone with. But now I got their email. Now I got their phone number. Now they know who I am. I know who they are. And all of a sudden, when they look to sell, maybe they sell to me. When I find an awesome deal, maybe I joint venture with them. Maybe they want to invest in one of my projects. Maybe they want to buy from me. Maybe they want to sell to me. Like, I don't know what kind of opportunities arise, but get involved in that group. Touch base every couple of months. Hey, how's everything going? What are you working on? You got any insight on this? I ran into this person, or your name came up in conversation. I was just thinking about you. Dude, hope all's well. Hey, happy holidays. Blah blah. Like, I don't know. Just touch base. Who knows what comes of it?
I love it.
Those are going to be the biggest players in your area, and that's the people that you want to hang out with.
Yeah, and add value to. I like what you said about resourcefulness and adding value. It's easy to. It's a lot easier for people to ask, to want to take, even thinking in terms of, that marketing piece, really what it was, sending the gift baskets. You could just be like everybody else and just send a letter and say, hey, sell me your house, or sell me your, property, or you can give something in advance. You could lose $100. You can lose $100 times, 100, or however many of those that you sent, but you took a risk to add some value to potentially create some relationships prior, even outside of real estate. It's just start the relationship, get the contact information, and that's something that I'm sure is, if it hasn't already, will pay back.
Yeah.
That'll probably be the best ROI you've ever gotten.
Yeah. Yeah. One of these guys owns 6,000 units just in Northeast Ohio, and eventually I know that he's looking to invest in deals, because everybody who invests in real estate is always a buyer. They're always a seller, or they're always a private lender. I bought a building from a guy. I bought my 13-unit building in a town called Lakewood from a guy. Called him up the next day. Said, hey, what are you going to do with the $500,000 you just got from that I just paid you? He goes, I don't really know. I said, why don't you lend it back to me at 12%? Okay. And he stroked me a check for, I think it was $150,000 to go invest in more deals.
Nice. That's awesome.
It's all about timing. Real estate's all about timing, and what's going on with the economy, what's going on with your personal life, what's going on with your business life, and are you cash rich right now? Are you equity rich right now? Are you cash poor? Are you equity like what does all that stuff look like? And just catching people at the right time. That's why it's important to continuously follow up with your private lenders, continuously follow up with sellers on a regular basis, because life changes, timing changes, and this is a very just catching them at the right timing kind of business.
Awesome. Was there anything else you wanted to say in closing before I wrap us up?
No, man, I appreciate you having me here. Thank you, and hopefully, provided some value, and hopefully, your followers get a lot of insight from this. And obviously, if there's anything that I can do, please plug in or go to commercialisawesome.com, and we'd love to have you guys out at an event too. That'd be great.
Awesome. Yeah, I want to thank you again, Tim. Tons of value here, but also simple. And I love simple. I'm a simple person. The things that I take action on are simple concepts, right? And commercial has been a space where I've learned from some Wall Street guys. I've learned from some finance guys, and it's always been like drinking from a fire hose. It's a bit overwhelming. So it's great to hear your testimony and see, what you've done going, not having any of that background and just taking what you knew in real estate. But I'd say more valuable than that is the attitude that you had from the very beginning. All right, I know this is possible. I may not have the resources right now, but I'm going to figure out how to be resourceful. And then you just got to work, created relationships, and have that mentality of, how do I add value? How do I create these relationships? How do I be resourceful? And it's obviously paid off. You're 32 years old, $100 million in
almost. I don't want to round up.
Okay. Well, what's a few million amongst friends, right? So that is just it's an amazing story. It's super awesome. And I don't know about the rest of our viewers, but I encourage you to. So the beautiful thing about commercial, well, let's say the intimidating thing about commercial is, okay, well, there may not be as many apartment buildings as there are motivated sellers on residential, right? But it does only take one deal to completely change your life, right? One deal you can be set up passive income for the rest of your life. Or one wholesale deal could have you set for, 6 months, a year. So that's awesome. And, I'm thinking with the amount of money that we spend on marketing to motivated sellers in residential, that's a much bigger list of owners. In commercial, it's a much smaller list. So it's not going to be that much more. I can allocate 10%, 20% of my marketing budget and just start sending some letters to generate some leads on, maybe some 8 units or some 14 units or, some of the smaller deals and just be a little bit more diversified. So I appreciate all the time and insights. Like you said, if you are looking for, if you're looking to get into this, if you don't have people in your backyard or in your community, or if you don't want to spend the time going through the associations to create those relationships, Tim is having an event up in Cleveland. So commercialisawesome.com. You can learn all about that. I will probably see you there. And other than that, any other ways people get in touch with you, Tim, or you have a blog or anything where you post these?
No, I post some like podcast interviews, and I do have a blog. I go to it's called cleturnkey.com. cleturnkey.com is my website. So investors usually go there. People want to watch some of the other podcasts or read some of my articles and stuff on investing in real estate, mindset. I'm a lot about mindset. That's like really my thing, personal development.
It's the best. It's the best ROI.
Yeah.
How much have you invested in your mindset over compared to?
Dude, I spend about $100,000 a year on masterminds. So that's all about just going to reading books, personal development seminars, plugging in, networking. I mean, like you said, it's the best return on investment that you can make. Nobody can ever take that away from you. And so, if you took all my real estate away from me today, I'd have it all back within 12 months.
Awesome. All right, Tim. Again, I appreciate you, man, and best of luck. And we'll talk to you soon.
All right, buddy. Thanks again for having me, Brandon.
All right. Bye.